Hello.
Dear friends, good evening to all of you. My hearty welcome to all the participants. I would request the panelists to mute their mic. They can unmute whenever they speak. Uh, Hearty welcome to the panelists as well. We at National Insurance Academy are very privileged to host this webinar on a very, very important subject of COVID-19 and its impact on the health insurance sector, challenges and opportunities. I would request the participants to keep raising questions in the course of the discussions of the panelists in the chat box. And at the end of the session, the panelists would respond to the questions to the extent possible. Friends, COVID-19 has created an abnormal situation. All of us are quite aware of it. We have been going through that. Never would we have dreamt of a world where people cannot shake hands, where people are running away from each other, where people cannot move freely from one place to another place, where we can't even go to our offices. We have to work from homes. COVID is also quite deadly. More than 4 million people are infected globally, and close to 300,000 people have almost close to 300,000 people have perished across the world. And there's a serious impact on the economies across the world. The developed European economies and US have been very, very badly hit by the pandemic. As there's no cure or vaccine, the only solution countries have found is to totally or partially lock down their economies. That's the only way of dealing with the virus, as that's what the countries have discovered. The impact of the economies is disastrous. There is expected to be a global recession, a deep recession. In Q1, most of the Western economies have degrown substantially. Coming to India, the situation is better, far better, but still alarming as cases are increasing and India seems to have not reached the peak. I mean, experts are saying we will reach the peak perhaps in June or July. We just have to wait and see. India has gone for a complete lockdown, initially for 40 days in two phases, now for another 2 weeks. The economic impact is very high. The economic impact on various sections of the population, especially the MSMEs, the migrant labor, people at the bottom of the pyramid, the impact is quite serious. IMF has said that the GDP growth for India this year could be around 1.9%. But there are many other economists who say that India's growth could even be less than 1%. There are some economists who say India could even degrow in the current year. But everyone is saying that probably the next financial year, India will stage a quick recovery once we have dealt with the virus. Coming to the insurance sector, the impact on the insurance sector is also quite high as any other sector of the economy. The insurers would be facing reduction in business, reduction in investment income, be having an impact on profitability as well as solvency, and also very importantly, impact on the way we service our customers. However, there is one line of business which seems to have a little bit of silver lining. It's health insurance. So there are many challenges because treating COVID, which is covered in all the policies, is going to add to the burden of the insurers. But there seems to be huge opportunities unfolding before the insurance sector. In India, there's still a large section of the population who are not covered by any form of health insurance. This is despite the fact that the government has come out with a big scheme, Ayushman Bharat, covering a large number of people. Even then, large section of the population is still left uncovered. So we are seeing a great opportunity to grow the health insurance. So to discuss this, the challenges as well as opportunities, we have three eminent panelists who are here. So I have very pleasure. I'm very pleased to briefly introduce the panelists to you. First, we have Mrs. Tajinder Mukherjee, Chairman and Managing Director of National Insurance. She took over as CMD of National Insurance in September 2018. She has more than 37 years of experience in the general insurance industry across three large companies across different lines of business. Then we have Dr. Prakash, a doctor who became a very successful insurance leader, uh, managing director of Star Health. He has a demonstrated history of working in the insurance industry, skilled in health insurance, risk management, other lines of business. A doctor with an MS, FRCS Glasgow, focused in surgery from Royal College of Physicians, Surgeons of Glasgow. We then have Mr. Bank Bathwal, CEO of Aditya Birla Health Insurance, more than 25 years of leadership and corporate board experience across insurance, finance, manufacturing, across, I think, different segments of the economy, and it's very successfully, been developing and growing Aditya Birla Health Insurance. So, it's a great pleasure to have the three eminent panelists, and my job is relatively simple, that is to ask questions, and it's for the panelists to respond to this. So let me start by asking the first question to Mrs. Tajinder Mukherjee. How do you look at the COVID-19 situation, both officially, also personally, and from a health insurance perspective?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. So we are, I think, in the almost post 40th year of our health insurance in India. More than 40 years ago, the health insurance started. And this is the first time that Indian insurance industry is going through a pandemic. So it's an unprecedented situation, no doubt. Lot of tough decisions coming from the government also in control. And like you said, sir, lockdown versus the life of the. So it's a close tussle between preserving the life of the people or their livelihood. So it's a unprecedented situation. So we are in a new area altogether. We don't know how it will end because the end doesn't seem too near or too close. So a lot of things to experience. But yes, what we are seeing in this is personally as well as professionally, a lot of awareness is happening, which 40 years of our insurance could not bring on the health front. So while the awareness is growing among the people, as you know that voluntary insurance is a very small part of our health portfolio. Maybe 10% of the population in India covers through voluntary. The rest comes from either large schemes like mass schemes or corporate also. So this 10% could grow to, we are looking at the awareness which is coming with this pandemic around. So that's definitely an opportunity. But also we are seeing a strange behavior of the providers. I don't say it's strange because they have their own compulsions, but the providers are shying away from coming forward for treatment in this period, for even for non-COVID patients. So that is a challenge, because when a person like us, an ordinary man, wants to take an insurance, but he sees that hospitals all across are shutting their doors or clinics are shutting their doors, so that doesn't really work better for our going forward for our business. But yes, both challenges and opportunities need to be very finely balanced so that we draw some benefit, a long-term benefit out of this pandemic. I'm sure that other panelists also will add their thoughts to this. So, yeah.
Thank you. Now I go to Dr. Prakash. Dr. Prakash, you are, very eminently placed here as not only as an insurer, but also as a doctor. We don't understand COVID. So, you probably understand much better. So, how do you look at the situation, of course, by correlating to the insurance industry, health insurance industry?
Thank you, Srinivasan sir. Very good evening to all of you. This COVID-19, there are still a lot of uncertainties, and it is very difficult to say we are 50% this way. We do not know India whether we'll go the other way. But in India, if I can ask your students, think of the most common disease in your mind, you will think about flu. Flu is not a seasonal disease, it is a perennial disease in India. The way in which COVID-19 is going around, I'm only worried it's not going to be seasonal, it's going to be perennial. Then we may get a COVID-20 or COVID-21. It remains to be seen. So, but historically, most of these, the only hope is, these epidemics have led to accelerated growth. After SARS in 2002-3, and after MERS, we have seen that all these epidemics have led to accelerated growth of health insurance. And out of all other industry, healthcare is expected to be the fastest to come back. We are just, as Mr. Srinivasan said, we are waiting for the days when we are going to shake hands, keep our hands on the rails in the elevator, or use the escalator with fingertips and not with pens. In fact, I've seen some of them are not using the handle to open the door. They're using the shoulder to open the door. So we are looking forward to the days when we can really come back to normal. But the answer to this question is, unless we find a cure for the disease or a vaccine, we cannot be certain about the future of this disease. Cure for the disease, they are plate, like you would have been seeing a lot of the convalescent plasma to the hydroxychloroquine sulfate, azithromycin, and remdesivir. Now they are trying to talk about a drug. But ideally, a drug has to undergo a double-blind controlled trial, and it has to be tested before it is released. And vaccine also, after the SARS outbreak in Singapore, it took nearly 18 months for the vaccine to be released. Although Singapore was very aggressive in getting a vaccine. Usually it takes around 12 to 18 months for vaccine to be ready. So I think by December, earliest by November or December, we may get a vaccine. So till we get a cure for the disease and a vaccine, it is very difficult to see how long the virus is expected to be with us. Maybe we have to continue to live with the virus for some time. And we hope, as we read, we hope that health should be the fastest to come back. And once the lockdown is released and normalcy restores, health should be the first to come back.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Prakash. Now I'll go to Mayank. Mayank, your views on the COVID situation. You are in Mumbai, the hotbed of COVID today. And how do you look at the insurance sector? You have to unmute your mic. Mayank, you have to unmute your mic.
Yeah, thank you, sir, and very good evening to all of my co-panelists and also to the audience. I would say, sir, of course, as the other panelists have said, this is clearly a very unprecedented situation, and who would have thought that, all of us will have to, sit at home for nearly 2 months now and, try and see how we can keep things going. And no one could have, no organization or no person individually could have been prepared for this situation. But there are times in the life cycle of categories of industries which are potentially like moments of truth for them, or the trigger points. And I think COVID-19 is in a way one of those moments for the entire insurance industry, and especially health insurance industry at this stage, where we have a real opportunity to demonstrate the impact, the positive impact that it can make on the lives of our consumers. Now, clearly, as Dr. Prakash said, that this is not going to, as it seems now, this is not going away so soon, and we still don't know what's the time that it will take for the vaccine to finally come in, or for the drug to finally come in. and even if it comes, at what scale will it be produced, and so forth. Therefore, the larger population, in what time cycle or timeline will it really be able to deal with the current situation. So we'll all have to find a way of living with this situation clearly, and organizations and individuals will have to find. Now, from an insurance perspective, sir, clearly there are two things. One is, how do we deal with the situation right now? What is it that we can do to kind of really build on the the image of the category? Because at times we've all heard about the fact that, are the consumers really trusting the insurance sector to the extent it should, and for the to my mind, for the kind of work that the category does in protecting families from financial distress, I think this is one more time to build on that. So because consumers are really, if they fall into, unfortunately, that problem of a COVID, how does insurance as a category respond? What flexibility does it provide? How are they able to give that comfort to their customers, that they are there, they care for them, for their customers, and they really empathize. So I think the ability to kind of serve the customers beyond the normal, to build on the trust of the category, is clearly a big opportunity for all of us sitting in the industry. The second area is going forward, and going forward, clearly not for the right reason. I mean, we wouldn't want the category to become more relevant because of a situation like COVID-19, but be as it may, clearly there is an increased need that is being felt by consumers at this time, that if there was a need of health insurance, this is the time. And so therefore, all of us, I'm sure, we are seeing that. I'm sure all my other peer colleagues on the panel are seeing that the demand for health insurance is clearly there. The way different channels are responding, different stakeholders are responding. We are, for example, able to get people to sell from home, and the consumers and prospects are responding so very effectively, clearly means that from a demand perspective, the demand for the category is definitely will increase. Question is how well we respond to it, how well we, because there will have to be modification in the way we reach out to customers, in the way we sell, in the way we serve, and and how do we keep increasing the comfort and the confidence of the larger consumer base in this category. And if we are able to do that, then clearly we have a much larger role to play in times ahead.
Thank you, Mayank. Now I go to Tajinder with the next question. Tajinder, more people are getting infected. The numbers are shooting up in India. I mean, today we see almost every day 3,500 to 4,000 people getting added to the number of COVID infected people. Do you think that this is going to cast a burden on the health insurance industry? Because now people are now moving to private sector. I mean, they were initially getting treated in public sector, government hospitals. Rightfully, private sector is now getting in. So do you think that the incurred loss ratio will shoot up and will there be a burden? You have to unmute. Tajinder, you have to unmute.
Yes, sir. So what we are seeing from the numbers which we are collating on behalf of, we are sending to council, and council is again sending it back to us. The number of claims which are coming to the insurers are not very alarming. So if you look at it as a percentage of the total affected cases in India, the number of insurance claims towards COVID are hardly 2%, or it's slightly less than 2%. So this can mean you can infer in two ways. One is that the population which is getting affected is largely uninsured or insured, but not able to get benefit like in a government mass scheme. Or we could, going forward, so in the short term, we are seeing that it is not having much impact on the ICR, because the non-COVID treatments have come down drastically. People are scared to go to the hospitals. Hospitals are scared to take patients. Whatever can be deferred is being deferred, postponed. So in that respect, ICR is not a big concern, sir. We think that otherwise it should be manageable. It might be even less than what would normally be in this period. That is my view, going by the numbers of as of now. But like I said, how this pandemic will ultimately pan around and how many people can more get affected, this could change on a day-to-day basis also. This is a very dynamic figure, but we are tracking it every day, and the numbers of insured persons is not very alarming. It's like if you see a catastrophe loss, the economic losses and insured losses. In fact, here the difference is much more drastic. Much less people are coming under the insurance purview than which are being affected. So in that respect, I think it is not something we are looking at as an alarming as of now.
Tejinder, I will ask one more question before I go to the other panelists. When we were talking of great opportunities, because every other line of business, especially in the general insurance, has a challenge. How do we really make this happen? I mean, everyone says health insurance will grow. Can it grow at 30, 40%? And what is it that needs to be done to make this growth happen?
Sir, two things are there to make any insurance sell. One is the awareness and the second is the affordability of that insurance. So while in this pandemic, the awareness is growing, it's growing very well, much more than what we could have done as an industry. But at the same time, the affordability is also coming down, sir. So what I feel is because loss of jobs, people are scared to spend money. But another thing which is also coming up, that health insurance is going up the ladder as far as priority spending is concerned. So if you have 5 choices to make for your money spent, then health insurance may move up. So in that respect, there will definitely be growth in retail insurance. People who can even slightly afford a smaller cover should come forward. So I am not talking of 30 to 40%, but yes, certainly 20-25% retail growth should be there, provided this affordability part is a little taken care of in the economic front, sir.
Right. I will now move to Dr. Prakash. Doctor, I mean, you said that this polio and this virus is going to be with us for quite some time. The other day, I heard the Union Health Minister saying only 2 viruses have been eradicated, which is polio and smallpox. Every other virus is still with us. So, what is the time frame? Can it be 1 year, 2 years? I mean, what would you suggest?
We have not yet understood the strain, the virus strain. We have not understood, and the numbers that you have been telling us in the beginning, the virus is infective and all ages are vulnerable to the virus. But the numbers, whatever we are trying to see in the media, it is based out of the reverse transcriptase PCR test, which is done. And these tests are only 60 to 70% sensitive. Meaning that out of 100, there may be 30 to 35 people who are tested negative, but who may be carrying the disease. They may be asymptomatic carriers, or they may deteriorate and die due to non-COVID reasons. If you look at the number of deaths that happened in the month of December and January, sudden deterioration in the illness of a patient who is known to have a cardiac disease or a lung disease, and the cause could not be identified. Now we retrospectively think it is all because of COVID. Initially, COVID was believed to be a disease that affects the respiratory system, but now we understand that it can affect the lungs, it can affect the kidneys, the heart, and the brain. How? Because it causes some microvascular clot, and this thrombus can go and block any area. And if it blocks in an area where the brain is controlling the speech, then the person may have aphasia, it cannot talk. And if it affects the kidney, that can be a kidney failure. So the strain of this virus, how it affects the postmortem studies and the clinical judgment that we make in a live patient, all these things are not matching. Every day there is something that is unfolding about the virus. So in this context, it will be very difficult to predict anything. The best what we can do is, definitely it spreads through aerosol. So physical distancing, social distancing, definitely it's going to help, not only now, in the near future. So, and we don't lose anything by following that. Those things which can be easily replicable and followable, we can follow. and we have to take abundant precautions. At the other end, we have to build the capacity of the hospitals. The hospital should have capacity with regard to beds and expertise, because 80% of the patients may have an asymptomatic state or a normal common flu like cough or cold that comes and goes with or without their knowledge. But the rest of the 20% may require hospitalization. And in this 5% of people who may tend to deteriorate may require a closed observation under a high dependency unit or an intensive care setting, where they may require a high flow nasal oxygen to ventilate or anything based on their saturation of oxygen. So if there are vulnerable people like diabetes, hypertensives, or COPD patients, or cancer patients who are on immunotherapy, or dialysis patients, these patients should be very carefully maintained, and any deterioration where the saturation is falling below 92, they can be moved to the hospitals. Otherwise, for common minor ailments, I think better we all stay at home and self-quarantine. Because in the next 6 months, any of us may contract the disease. We would have contracted the disease, we don't know, unless we do the antibody test. And again, we need to know how effective, how sensitive these antibiotic tests are going to be.
Right.
So with all these uncertainties remaining, let us maintain the social distance, and let us build the capacity of beds and expertise in the hospital. And let us wait and see in the next 6 months how it works. And for an industry like insurance, I think we should be geared up to have work from home conditioning for the at least next 6 months. If not 100%, currently we may have 10% of the skeletal staff working in our offices. This can increase gradually to up to 50% up to December. But 100% of people working in the office, sitting in a closed atmosphere, I don't think it can happen till the end of this 2020.
Doctor, I just have one more question. The number of cases will increase, and private sector will get into, hospitals will get into this in a big way. But the cost of COVID treatment now seems to vary from 80,000 to 8 lakhs. And how would the insurance industry, maybe it's not a big problem now, but going forward, it could be a bigger problem. How do we handle this?
In your question, I find the answer.
Okay.
Because you didn't ask me, how are you going to handle? You asked me, how do we? In your we, I can see that you have included the council, you have included the regulator, and you have included all the 31 or 32 insurance companies. Because this cannot be handled independently. It will be very difficult. Hospitals, currently, their revenue is going down because they don't have elective surgeries. Their revenue is going down, but unfortunately, their expenditure is going up. To every patient who comes in, they have to take these. Even for an elective endoscopy, they have to do a COVID test. They have to use protective equipments. They have to keep the patient overnight and wait for the COVID test results to be released. So all these things incurs cost. Their expenditure is increasing and their revenues are going down. So definitely hospitals will be revenue hungry once the condition restores. So that is a very, very catch-20 situation. I think now we should work on standardization of cost. Standardization of cost is not available in India, and we have been talking about it. We cannot go and dictate the doctors on whether to admit and when to discharge, because this is not our cup of tea, and we'll be doing injustice to our customers if we do that. Because we do not know who will end up into complication and which type of patients are going to deteriorate. So naturally, we cannot go and dictate the treatment to the doctors. We have to accept their treatment. Only thing is, we have to come for an understanding and see that what can be the cost to a PPE kit, the personal protective equipment that is being commonly used. A doctor, a nurse, and a paramedical who is caring for the patient, if they're going to use a personal protective equipment, and if there are 5 people in the ward or 10 people in the ward, they're going to use one equipment for the day, but they cannot charge from all the 10 people. And an equipment which is available for close to 550 rupees, to my knowledge, it is available even at 495. It is charged from 3,000 to 5,000. And in fact, Delhi government has asked us to pay around 1,087. But there are hospitals charging 2,500, 3,500. There is no upper limit. So this is one example. So we need to be together and arrive at some standardization of cost. We should also understand the pain points of the hospitals. So we need them to survive. We need them to stabilize the scenario, and we need them to save lives. So naturally, we should understand. And I think standardization of cost is something that can happen not over a discussion among insurers, but that should be a discussion between the payer and the provider. We should call them for a discussion, and we should look at how we can progress through a synergy.
Right. Thank you, Doctor. Now I'll go to Mayank. Mayank, see, recently the government said that group health is mandatory for employees of establishments who are trying to open up in the lockdown scenario. I mean, virtually, we are looking at a situation where health insurance will become mandatory for all establishments, companies. Do you see a great opportunity for the insurance sector in this?
Sir, as far as the organized sector, the employees are concerned, I mean, other than the very small micro, I would say some segment of the SME and the micro organizations were not covered, but the the larger SMEs and the larger organizations were already covering their employees under health insurance. As I understand now, even the contractual workers need to be covered if they if you need to get them back to work and all. So to that extent, yes, this is an extension, and the organizations which were not covering their full-time employees and also the contractual employees, then definitely there's a opportunity to cover them. And to that extent, you're right. There is increased opportunity for the sector to increase the penetration level. But only point is, sir, that this still is not a very large part of the employed population, because a very large part of the employed population is still working on their own, the trader community, the self-employed people, and so that will still remain not get under this benefit coverage. But even small steps are actually helpful, and I'm hopeful that once this whole process starts for this segment of the working population, it will continue even in a post-COVID situation, because organizations will realize the need for this.
Mayank, one more question to you. I mean,
factors also which will help.
After the COVID impact, a few insurers came with COVID products, and I think many have built COVID into group health insurance products. So, I mean, for a customer, I think he's confused. He wants to know whether he should take a standalone COVID insurance product, or should he go for a comprehensive health insurance? What would you recommend? Because I've heard people asking, what is this? Should I just take this product and be happy with that?
So my view, and this is any way that you can increase penetration is of course good, and to that extent, I guess the the whole effort by many players on bringing a COVID product is definitely another step to increase penetration. Having said that, I personally feel that diseases don't come by names. They don't. It doesn't happen that you will get this disease and then a disease B or disease C tomorrow. So given the fact that insurance is clearly becoming so relevant in these times, and it's if you look at it, it's not a very expensive product. I mean, for a 10,000 rupee, you can get a reasonable amount of coverage. And for a 15 to 20,000 rupees, you can get the entire family covered. I would feel that the first coverage that any individual or any family should take is the full comprehensive health insurance coverage provided by all of the providers today. And then if you want to add a level of coverage because you feel that, for example, if someone has a 500,000 cover and they feel that because the cost of COVID today in this situation, as you said, that can go up to 8 lakh rupees or 9 lakh rupees as we are seeing, then you want to add another layer of protection through these COVID specific products. That could be definitely a strategy. But not having any coverage and then buying only a COVID specific product, to my mind, is not a very good strategy, because it can give you assurance at one level, but it may not necessarily be the right strategy to deal with the current situation. So my personal view is that one should go with COVID specific product should only be a add-on and not a base cover for any person today.
Okay, I will now go to Tajinder. Tajinder, you mentioned this, that non-COVID claims have come down. People have become healthier. People are avoiding elective surgeries. Is it that not going to hospitals has made people healthier? I mean, are we seeing a permanent trend of reduction in health claims? Is there anything for us to learn? Because Dr. Prakash is there. I hope he wouldn't mind.
Sir, it's not, I don't think that surgeries are only being postponed. So the condition is not being reversed for a patient who will need a intervention sometime in the future. But it can also, on the flip side, it can also have a different result, because let us say persons who are on regular, let's say dialysis, they are doing regularly, and suppose their cycle gets disturbed because of this hesitation of the providers in giving the timely support. So this could result in a much bigger claim later when it comes as a renal failure. So we have to look at it both ways. Yes, elective surgeries like cataract and all are easily postponed, but they will come back, because whoever has a cataract will definitely get it done, maybe not now, 1 year later. So it's not, we are only postponing the effect. And yes, you can say that flu or these small hospitalizations which used to happen resulting from OPD consultations, that have come down. People are scared to go as an admission into a hospital. But otherwise, chronic diseases and all could have a much worse effect on our claims going forward. They could come as a bigger claim later because timely interventions have not happened when they should have happened. So again, as I said, it's an unprecedented situation. We don't know how it will end. So every day is a dynamic day in seeing the results. Yeah.
Okay, I go to Dr. Prakash. Doctor, I think I come back to the, you said we should work together to, bring down the COVID rates. I mean, looking at a broader picture of the health insurance scenario, now this is a battle we have been, the insurance industry, I think for themselves on behalf of the customers, have been trying to do, how to control the, spiraling health insurance cost. And I think it has not worked out in the past. Do you think should all the insurers come together under the General Insurance Council banner, start negotiating rates instead of each company negotiating rates?
Again, either you have an answer in the question or a trick in the question, sir. Now the trick is, should all insurers come together? So I can share my experience. See, we can negotiate with the hospitals only when we control volumes. And in our experience, while implementing the mass insurance scheme, close to 5 crore plus people were covered in the state of Andhra Pradesh, and we could command or take authority on the pricing of the hospitals because we control the volume. And when we implemented the same scheme in Tamil Nadu, we came back and said that in Andhra Pradesh, it was the same cost for all over the state, be it a rural area or a metro. We paid the same cost to a procedure, maybe a laparoscopy cholecystectomy. We paid the same procedure, and I found that most of the big hospitals in the cities are not participating. The smaller hospitals in the suburbs are actively participating because we are paying more for them, and whereas we are paying less for these hospitals in the cities. So what we did when we had the opportunity to implement the same scheme in Tamil Nadu, we said that we are going to grade the hospital, and we are going to pay 100 rupees for a high grade hospital A, and for the B 80%, and for the C 70%. When I put forth this idea, there was a lot of repercussion. The hospitals were showing a lot of resistance. We are all sort of, all doctors are trained under the same medical curriculum, and every one of them are doctors. How can you differentiate, and how can you pay differently to different hospitals? So I just told them, as a surgeon, I have seen, when I take my patients and do a surgery in a corporate hospital, if the patient pays 1 lakh, he will say, Dr. Prakash, you have charged me 1 lakh, but my fees will be less than 30,000 there. Less than a third, and I have to part my fees with my assistant and my anesthetist. It is only 1/3 which reaches the professional services. Another 1/3 goes for consumables, pharmacy, and another 1/3 for the hospitals, bed, and other things. So we have to keep this factor in mind. So I told them not all hospitals have the same manpower cost or infrastructure cost or the real estate cost. Naturally, the one in the city is incurring more cost. I said that we are going to pay this much, provided you fulfill all these criteria. And to the policy makers or to the government, I only told them one thing: if you are going to spend 1,000 crores per annum, these 1,000 crores which reaches from the government to the hospitals have to be reinvested on the healthcare ecosystem. So let me grade the hospitals and pay them. A person in grade C, let him reinvest, equip his hospital, upgrade his hospital, and claim to be B and get 10% more. The B, let him move into A. In that way, if the scheme is implemented for 4 or 5 years, end of 4 or 5 years, we can see that the whole ecosystem would have got developed. Ayushman Bharat should deliver that. How long are we going to pay money year on year? As we pay money, we have to take care of the requirements, the numbers, whatever we have currently. At the same time, we have to build up the infrastructure.
Right, right.
So if all insurers come together, sir, as you rightly said, naturally, if we are going to control 20 to 30% of the volume, but as Madam said, hardly 10 to 11% of the people have a retail and group insurance cover. So with this 10 to 11%, even if you all come together, we are a very small part of the turnover of the hospitals.
Right.
So if the government schemes are given to insurance companies, and if insurance companies come together, then there can be a good opportunity for us.
Right.
Talk to the hospitals and achieve a standardization.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. I will move to Mayank. Mayank, this is a problem which we have been discussing. There are too many health insurance policies in the market. And that's the reason the regulator came with the Arogya Sanjeevani policy. But, that's not a big policy. It's a smaller sum insured. So can there be an ideal product? To me, can I have a 25 lakhs policy, floater, all hospitalization covered, no exclusions, OPD with empaneled doctors, I can make 25 visits. Can the industry really come with that such a product so that the customers are not confused and they have no grievance?
So it's a very good question, and let me just give you a context of this from where our partners in the joint venture come from, South Africa. So for example, in South Africa, the whole health insurance industry works on a community pricing basis, something similar to what our Ayushman Bharat scheme is, where everyone, irrespective of age, irrespective of health background, is given the same premium, and there are minimum prescribed benefits where the base policy, the core cover that everyone will offer, will have to give minimum benefits, which means that it will have to cover virtually, if I remember, about 35 chronic conditions and virtually all critical illnesses, and it covers OPD and so on and so forth. Now, something like that, as you very rightly said, made a point observation in your question itself, sir. This has to be done at an industry level, because one of the things that will happen, because insurance, sir, there is an element of selection and anti-selection. When we started business, when we came with a product where we were offering day one treatment, hospitalization cover for people who had one or more of these four conditions of diabetes, asthma, blood pressure, high cholesterol. And of course, the moment you provide them day one coverage, the pricing increases. Now, because there were, I think, one or two players who also were providing, and we also added an element of OPD in it, that if you have OPD expenses because of that treatment, you will get covered. Suddenly the pricing becomes higher. Now, whenever the product was being sold, there was a comparison that there is another product which is cheaper and this is more expensive. Now, no one is looking at the fact that, oh, there is a waiting period, exclusion here, it is from day one and all of that. Now, suppose if that was to be offered by everyone in the industry, then suddenly the price discovery will happen automatically. And for the customer, it is not about, oh, this is an expensive or cheaper product. And we have to have a way, sir, of dealing with selection and anti-selection, because the moment you get into no exclusion, no waiting period, for example, someone who wants to go for a glaucoma surgery tomorrow, will go and buy a product and get paid more than what the premium is the next day. So I think somewhere maybe it is, I think, one of the effort by the regulator in making the exclusions more standard is a step in the right direction, but in my personal view that it should be made at a much larger scale. And as long as this is a first step and we are going to take the step 2 and step 3 and step 4, I would welcome that thing, because ultimately that's what the customer needs. One of the big reason for today, if any insurance company were to look at the claims repudiation, a large part of the claims repudiation is happening because of waiting period exclusions, or which the customer doesn't really understand. It's not really a repudiation. It's just that the claim was not due in any case. But in the sales process, somehow the customer has either not understood or the salesperson did not make them understand. And to the extent we remove exclusions, it will be better for the category and the trust of the customer will only increase. So right step to go towards, but it will have to be an industry stand. It cannot be a 1 player or 2 player or 3 player stand, because then the pricing will become too much for, because the moment you remove exclusions, pricing will impact, so increase, sir. That's a fact. But if a customer gets comprehensive cover, why not? What's the problem in that? And I think there'll be many customers who will be willing to take that. So maybe everyone offers one comprehensive cover, and then there is a cover with some exclusions and for people who cannot afford it. But I think that's the right thing to do in my view, sir.
Okay, I go to Tajinder. Tajinder, you were able to hear me?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So
yeah.
The question is, these Ayushman Bharat and also the state schemes, they seem to be growing. Good that it grows and covers more people. For example, the other day Maharashtra government said that they're going to cover the entire population in their policy, in their scheme. So if all the state governments say that they're going to cover the entire population in their schemes, what is left for health insurers? Is it a challenge?
No, I don't think so, sir, because these schemes have been there for many years now. If you remember, sir, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, they have been there for several years, and still voluntary insurance has stayed in those places and people have bought. So even in the best of developed countries where there is a good amount of social schemes where the government ensures a certain level of good health treatments, people still opt for voluntary because of various reasons. There could be they don't like waiting period, they want some extra benefits. In India, it is more related to the quality of the health cover, because people really think that when it is a emergency situation, then the response of a private hospital is much better, quicker and more effective than the response of a government hospital. So with that background, voluntary insurance is here to stay despite all the efforts which the government may take, but that it's a good job done by government, because people who would not have bothered to or who could not afford the health insurance are being covered for at least a basic health cover. So in that way, it's a good thing done, more people coming under the purview. But voluntary insurance would stay and people would continue, whoever can afford to will continue to buy it, sir. It's very much there.
Okay. Dr. Prakash, this is to you. I mean, I'm able to buy Crozin across the counter in a pharmacy. So can I buy health insurance over the counter in a pharmacy? Is such a day will ever happen? At least I'm not talking of very big sum insureds, smaller sum insured. Is that possible?
I hope your dream should come true, sir. But today, we're all veterans in the industry. I would only request you one thing. Even a person who belongs to the insurance industry, it is very difficult to understand a health insurance product. Most of the health insurance products available in the market are complex, some form of exclusions. When I talk to hospital owners, and my own colleagues, doctors are not happy because they find the insurance products are always complex, too many hidden things, and whenever there is a claim, as Dr. Mayank was pointing out, there are a lot of things that unfolds and the customer comes to know about the product and its features only at the time of claim. And insurance company starts underwriting a policy at the time of claim. So these discrepancies do remain. So definitely, whatever you said, a product that can be made available in the pharmacy for a very, very affordable price is a very welcome option. But I'll put forth my view here. Among the stakeholders, the insurers, the hospitals, and the customers, in the industry, fraud is very rampant. And we work on a very narrow underwriting margin. Even 5%, 10% leakage, even 2% leakage is something very big for us. And in this context, if I have a product which is designed in a very most simple way and made available at a pharmacy, I would only expect the healthy people to go and buy the product, not those with a threat of a disease, who have a strong family history, or for whom their doctors have already told that they are suffering from some form of ailments and they may require medical assistance in the near future. It is only those people who are at threat who are going there. 10% of people who are covered under insurance, a small percentage may be for tax benefits. A majority of them are people who are under a threat of a disease. So among the stakeholders, the insurers, the hospitals, and the common man, customers are also a big factor contributing to the leakage in the system. So if every healthy customer is going to buy, then we can make a product available in the pharmacy. But if there is going to be adverse selection, that's a problem which we face in India.
Okay. Right. Thank you, doctor. I go to Mayank. Mayank, digital. Of course, digital has assumed a lot of focus these days, in the COVID days. But somehow in health insurance, we haven't made huge strides in digital marketing. Is it because the products are not amenable to digital selling? Or what are the issues and how do we resolve this? Mayank.
I do feel, sir, that hopefully current times will, as digitizations and digital has suddenly become the buzzword and everyone is talking about it. So hopefully, these times will create, a bit of a positive trigger. But having said that, let me try and address your larger question. I think, sir, to some extent, the answer lies in the previous question that you asked me. That, today, the way the product is designed, the way the product is, because there are exclusions, waiting periods, and for the right reasons, sir, because of some, and also some of the reasons, issues that Dr. Prakash highlighted, that there should not be anti-selection. I think that when the customer is looking at the product, so they feel that they need someone to assist them in that process, because they come across clauses which they don't understand, and plus, health insurance has, by nature of the product, has these medical jargons, howsoever simple you try and make it, but still there are elements of contractual terms and even the product benefits which sometimes a regular layman customer finds it a little bit difficult to understand and appreciate fully, and therefore there is an element of advisory role that they tend to seek from the seller. Now, if the product were to become very standard and there were no virtually very less benefits which are not excluded, or where the product was not very different across different providers, and I think then, of course, people will feel more comfortable because they would know that, what are they buying, and, the product may not be too different from the other provider that they're looking at. Because the fact is that even today, the research shows that 60–70% of, health insurance buyers are doing some kind of research digitally before they actually finally. So even if someone approaches them, they will still go to the net, find out, get some detail. So there is an element of digital, journey that they are definitely going through. But it's just that when it comes to the final buying leg, they feel that there is some element of advisory that they need. The second leg is, sir, because for the category as a whole also there is this thing whether and because some they've heard about claims not being paid in X case or Y case, and they don't know the full detail of that. Sometimes they feel that if they buy it from someone with some advisory, in some way they are passing on the responsibility of that person to assist them at the time of the if the claim was to come. So they're seeking some kind of a service guarantee also from the seller, apart from the comfort of buying the right product. Having said that, there are now categories of products which have started selling on the digital platforms. So, which are of course very simple bite-sized offerings, which are not, I would say, holistic health insurance offerings, but simple products like personal accident, some aspects of critical illness, some hospital cash, and even very low ticket size health insurance, which has started selling without assistance on these platforms of these e-commerce players, the Paytms and the MobiKwicks of the world. And my sense is that going forward, as we start tweaking the products which are relevant and ready for the digital platform, we will see some increase. But having said that, I don't see the role of the face-to-face seller or the telephone to whatever telephone seller going away so soon in health insurance.
This is to Tajinder. Tajinder, I mean, this is a question from the one of the participants as well. This pandemic has really raised a lot of issues. Do you think the insurers have the ability to cover? I mean, one is health, of course, like property as well. Do you think there is a need for some kind of an indigenous solution like a pool or something for pandemic covers? Because today every policy is now excluding pandemic.
Yes, definitely, sir, because as we saw in the 9/11 aftermath, suddenly terrorism became a focus of attention, and we had to make a terrorism pool to give comfort to our insureds. So similarly, as because the trigger has already happened, so for this pandemic, of course, we don't see a solution coming. But going forward, learning out of the experience from this pandemic, definitely there will be requirements from all sorts of industries, whether it is for health insurance or whether it is for death arising out of health of such a pandemic and loss of income of people. There could be also disruption in supply chain and so consequential losses to that effect. So there will be a host of requirements coming from the industry, and as a general insurance industry, I think it is our duty to listen to that demand and create some opportunity out of it. Definitely, this is a sign which going forward, but we will know the exact impact or what could be the demand only when this finally reaches a conclusion. So it's a thought to be given. We should be looking at it, sir, going forward.
Okay, Dr. Prakash, I mean, there are many questions from the audience. They're a bit worried. Will you increase the premium? Will the premium rates go up? And they're also saying that a lot of senior citizens are impacted by COVID. Will the senior citizens premium go up?
Ideally, we should not increase the premium unless we test the soil in an anticipation that we are going to pay more. Rather, we should control. We should keep away the fear and apprehension. We should promote wellness among our customers, and we should control the cost that we pay to the hospitals. We should not look at increasing the premium in this scenario, because in this scenario, we have to keep the premium affordable so that more people can get the benefit of health insurance. If the insurance companies are going to increase the premium or trying to say, as you are asking Madam about pandemic, sir, the pandemic, I want to say, the most common disease in India, diabetes, it is a growing pandemic. It is a growing pandemic where if there are some 4.2 crore people who are affected and another 3.9 crore people who are pre-diabetics, and the expectation is by 2030 the numbers are going to increase to 2.5x. And the increase of diabetes is happening across the globe. So that is also a growing pandemic. At least this pandemic, we are trying to find a final day for corona. But for diabetes, it is only a growing pandemic. So insurance companies should come forward to cover a pandemic, because as a common man, when I buy a policy, I do not know about epidemics and pandemics. I only know that, as Mayank was telling, it is an infection. Maybe the infection is due to bacteria or virus or fungus. I do not know what virus it is, influenza virus or coronavirus. I'm a person who buy an insurance, and if there is any infection, you should pay for me. You cannot say that it is a coronavirus and it is an epidemic or it is a pandemic. Ideally, sir, insurance companies, already there is a trust deficit between the customers and the insurance companies, between the doctors and the insurance companies. In this scenario, we should not talk about not paying for pandemic, or not whatever we are trying to discuss. Increasing the premium in this context is not the way forward. Insurance companies should wait, should see their results end of this year. After seeing FY21 results, we can look at, but anticipating an increasing outgo, I cannot tax my senior citizens.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's a good news for the customers. I'll go to Mayank. Mayank, this question of servicing the customers, especially in a pandemic period where there is a lockdown, things are not normal. So this question has come from the participants. How does the insurance industry take care of customer service?
Sir, it's a valid question, because that's one of the concerns that comes to the mind of customers, that especially in the context of claims. Because at one level, I would say that whilst all good organizations would have had their business continuity plan, and as regulated entities, we in any case, all of us had BCP plan. But I wonder if any company had a business continuity plan for their entire population, employee force to work from home, because none of us ever thought that this kind of a pandemic will ever come, right? I mean, going forward, of course, we'll all change our plans and upgrade our plans to do that. Having said that, sir, in my view, I think the way the category has responded, all companies, have responded, and I can definitely share about my own organization. I think the way the employees, the way the the entire ecosystem, including our support ecosystem of technology partners and all, have responded is commendable. Because as I said in my first response question to your question, sir, how do I see the situation for insurance companies? This is a time to create trust, to enhance trust of not just the organization but the category. Because this is a time when we can demonstrate that this, this is, this category really, as providers, we really care for you, and it's not, and change many of the, what I would say, not necessarily, true perceptions, because there are, of course, there are cases where people may have suffered, but by and large, we have paid such large amount of claims, and if and the fact that not many companies are still making underwriting profit, which means that we are still paying paying out more than sometimes we get as a premium. So from a servicing perspective, I think all of us have gone out, made arrangements for work from home, created technology arrangements. In our case, fortunately, about 99%, virtually 1 or 2% of our customer interactions could not have been initiated on our digital platform. So which means that customers can virtually do everything on our digital platforms, including, of course, putting their claims documents and upload them, and the claims can be paid based on that. And of course, what we have done is that we've added many other facilities in these times, where we are calling up customers. We have made flexibility in the way the documents are processed. In some cases, even the regulator has come back and said that be more lenient in these things, in the processes. I think all of that has been put forward by most of the companies, and in our case, we have been able to get virtually all customer-facing processes to be completely available on the on our digital platforms, on telephone. Our call centers are working from home, and I'm sure all the other companies in the category also are doing the same thing, because this is where the customers really lose or enhance their trust in the category.
Tajinder, this is to you. I mean, this is a question from the participants. They're saying that would you give further relaxation in terms of payment of premium? Would you reduce premium because of the COVID impact on the people? On a broader perspective, I mean, what do you want from the regulator? Do you think the regulator can provide some more relaxations to the insurers, to the customers? What's your view on that?
So already we have provided now almost for more than 50 days of grace period already there for the renewals which could not happen during this lockdown. And then there is anyway a 30-day grace period over and above that for health insurances. So I think the regulator has been quite liberal in allowing us to continue the cover and not really make it against the insured as regards continuity. And on case-to-case basis, even if that is not met by a insured, we will definitely look at this scenario and provide the comfort to the insured as far as continuity is concerned. So I don't see much problem in the health insurance part for this cover, but like what you asked about reducing the premium, I second what Dr. Prakash had said, that we have to wait for the results, sir, because already health insurance is a very high COR product, especially for the public sector insurance companies. So we have to wait for the year to pan out to see the result at the end of the year. Whatever benefit, definitely, because we will definitely pass on. If there is a benefit we see in our results, it should go back. But like I said, regulator is not happy to increase the rates regularly on any retail product. So we have to look at a window of 2 to 3 year period before we can make any changes in our any retail policy. So with that in view, we'll see how it comes out. Definitely nobody is looking at unrealistic margins out of this scenario. We are definitely not looking at that.
Okay, Dr. Prakash, this is a question specifically on the COVID treatment. So there's a question from the participants. Will we pay for the cost of PPE kits? Would we pay for the cost of quarantine? Would we pay for the cost of testing whether a person is suffering from COVID? So these are very specific questions from the participants. I'm glad to say there are almost 400 participants in this webinar. Must be one of the largest attended webinars, I think, thanks to the panelists. So Dr. Prakash, you are
talking about the cost of the COVID-19 test, the cost of personal protective equipments, and the cost of quarantine.
Yeah.
Ideally speaking, I can share our experience. We would have paid close to 600 COVID-related claims, and in this, around 45% are confirmed cases, but 55% are suspected cases. So what are these suspected cases? When it comes to evaluation, when it comes to treatment and follow-up and quarantine, either it is a suspected case or a confirmed case, it is the same regimen, same cost. So to the insurers, it is not only the number of confirmed cases, it is also the suspected cases that counts. That is going to impact my financial outgo. So to the hospitals, I have to pay for the PPE equipments. There is no doubt. I need not pay for the quarantine if it is an individual who is asymptomatic, tested to be positive because he is in close contact with the patients, and he requires a quarantine. That need not be paid by insurance. But a PPE kit we have to pay. How many PPE kits and at what cost? Are the hospitals going to have a big trade margin on that? I cannot allow such trade margins. And how many, see, if there is a bill of around 2.5 lakhs, I can see nearly 1.1 lakh is on these consumables. on these PPE kits, on these biomedical waste managements, on the nurse and the team handling charges. All these are extra 30 to 40% added because of the COVID scenario. As Madam rightly said, this is not the time for us to make unrealistic margin. This applies to hospitals also. We can prevent our losses. We can contain our losses, but this is not the time for unrealistic margins. So naturally, sir, we should pay, but at a commonly agreed price, the number and the price. Sometimes hospitals are very tricky. They accept for a very good price with us, but they know how to make extra money. They bundle the procedures, they increase the length of stay, they add 2 more tests, and then they compensate for what they have adjusted. So we have to be very careful. We have to be comprehensive in the outlook.
Right. Mayank, this is the last question. I think we are almost 6:11 is the time. I know this is going to be a challenging period. The Q1 results of all insurers will take a hit because the premium incomes have taken a drop. So do you have any wish list from the government? Do you want any stimulus package from the government or the regulator on behalf of the industry? I'm not talking personally.
Sir, I mean, if we have to be realistic about it, I think there are many more sectors who need stimulus before the health insurance sector can seek a stimulus in these times. And I think all of us have to be mindful of that situation. Having I think in a way I would say that my biggest wish list will be that if from a sector perspective, to adding to the point that Dr. Prakash mentioned, and I think it's very important that we quickly, from a healthcare category perspective, maybe that category needs some stimulus from the government so that they don't have to end up looking at some of these areas to increase their margin, and the costs and all are meaningful. So because please remember that it is not just about what the insurers end up paying. It's ultimately if there's a large community of people who are not insured, how will they pay if they are exposed to these costs? And these are not small costs. 6, 7, 8 lakh rupees can put good families in big financial distress in times when we all know that there is income loss and there are liquidity problems at individual level we are facing. So I think there is a need for the healthcare sector to be looked into whatever challenges they are going through, and if there's something that can be done, and to increase the capacity there at a macro level. I mean, that would be my sense. And if the payer and the provider categories can come together and solve this problem in whatever way, there is effort being made at different levels. As I'm part of FICCI Health Insurance Committee, and we are talking. Of course, it's not an easy settlement to come to, but to the extent we can find ways of moving, because ultimately the third P, the patient suffers in the process if the other 2 Ps are not able to come to terms, and that's not what we want, especially in these times when they already have so much stress to deal with. That the last thing that we want to make them deal is to look at how they will get out of the hospital because the payer and the provider are not able to come to terms on this thing. So
with that note, we come to the end of the webinar. I thank the participants, almost 400 in number, for their participation. Many of the questions I included in my questions, and some of them, of course, we have not been able to answer for the shortage of time. We will do it offline. I thank the panelists for all of them were quite eminent in their own fields. Very valuable comments, suggestions have been made. Thank you very much. On behalf of National Insurance Academy, thank the participants, the panelists, for a very, very fruitful webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.